picture this, right? You've been dealing with um, just a really stubborn, painful health condition.
Right.
And you're totally exhausting your local medical options. So you hop online, searching for some kind of alternative, and eventually you land on this absolutely stunning website for a stem cell clinic abroad.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen those.
Right. Like, we are talking high-definition drone footage of this gleaming, ultra-modern facility right on the ocean. The site is just packed with these incredibly emotional, highly produced video testimonials. And right there on the homepage, they're offering this massive, all-inclusive treatment package that promises to, basically turn back the clock and repair your body. I mean, it looks exactly like the future of regenerative medicine, just delivered right to your screen.
It's an incredibly compelling picture. I mean, it really is. When you're living with chronic pain or a really difficult diagnosis, you're actively looking for hope.
Yeah, exactly.
And a beautifully packaged, highly professional presentation, well, it feels exactly like that lifeline you've been waiting for.
It really does feel that way. But presentation is not proof.
Welcome to STEMCIERGE, your global concierge for advanced regenerative medicine. Here, we explore the science and breakthroughs redefining longevity and human performance, giving you clarity, confidence, and trusted insights as you navigate stem cell therapy around the world. Let's begin our deep dive.
So, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive into the STEMCIERGE document. 7 essential questions to ask before choosing a stem cell clinic abroad.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to equip you, the listener, with a highly practical, objective framework. We're going to help you cut through the glossy marketing, spot the hidden biological and logistical red flags, and truly understand the real science behind international stem cell treatments.
Because what's often marketed to you as this singular, miraculous thing called stem cell therapy is it's actually a massively complex spectrum of different interventions.
Yeah.
Some have genuine scientific backing, some are highly experimental, and frankly, some are just dangerous gambles operating in these weird regulatory gray areas. So as a patient, you really have to know how to distinguish between them.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the very foundation of the issue, which is the legal and regulatory standing of the treatment. Because before we can even evaluate whether a treatment works, we have to understand what kind of intervention we're actually looking at, right?
Yeah.
And clinics, they often blur these lines intentionally.
They absolutely do. It's by design. To protect yourself, you have to mentally separate these offerings into 3 distinct categories. You've got approved or authorized treatments, clinical trials, and then experimental interventions being sold commercially.
Okay, so 3 separate buckets.
Exactly. And they are not interchangeable, even though the marketing brochures love to blend the language to make them sound identical.
So let's start with the gold standard, right? Approved. When a clinic claims they're using an approved therapy, what does that actually mean in a real scientific context?
Well, an authorized treatment means a national or regional regulatory body has rigorously evaluated that specific cell product for a highly specific, defined use.
Right.
The text actually gives a great example of a drug called Ryoncil. So in 2024, the FDA approved Ryoncil, which is a therapy utilizing mesenchymal stromal cells derived from bone marrow.
Let's pause there and decode that for a second. Mesenchymal stromal cells. What are those exactly, and why are they important?
Good question. They're essentially a type of cell found in bone marrow and some other tissues that can help modulate the immune system. They basically reduce inflammation.
Oh.
So in the case of Ryoncil, the approval was for a very narrowly defined group of pediatric patients suffering from something called steroid refractory acute graft versus host disease.
Wow, that sounds intense. That's when someone receives a bone marrow transplant, right? But the new donor cells essentially recognize the patient's body as foreign and start attacking it.
Yes, exactly.
And the steroid refractory part just means the standard steroid treatments aren't stopping that attack.
You've got it. It is a severe, life-threatening immune response. And Ryoncil was proven to help calm that specific immune attack in children. But here is the critical part, and where clinics play a bit of a sleight of hand.
Doug?
Clinics will sometimes point to an approval like that and imply to you, the consumer, hey, look, mesenchymal stromal cells are FDA approved.
Ah, I see. It's a total bait and switch.
It is. Approval for that one highly specific, rare pediatric immune disease absolutely does not mean those same bone marrow cells are suddenly approved to be injected into your knee for arthritis or, your spinal cord for an injury, or even delivered through an IV for general anti-aging.
It sounds like it's like a restaurant boasting about having a Michelin star.
Hmm.
But when you look closer, the star was awarded to a totally different fine dining restaurant they own in Paris.
Yep.
And they just want you to trust the brand new, untested experimental menu at their local burger joint.
That is a perfect analogy. That's exactly it. They're trading on the borrowed credibility of a completely different medical application.
So that covers approved. But what about clinical trials? Because I see clinics boasting all the time that they're listed on clinicaltrials.gov. And to the average person, I mean, a government database sounds incredibly official.
Oh, it definitely has the veneer of authority. But the International Society for Stem Cell Research, or ISSCR, explicitly warns patients about this. A listing on a database like clinicaltrials.gov is not an endorsement.
Wait, really? It's not?
No, it's just a registry. It's not proof of effectiveness, and it doesn't even guarantee that a rigorous regulatory body has reviewed the safety protocols.
Because literally anyone running a trial can essentially just register it there.
Correct. A legitimate clinical trial is a highly structured research study. It's designed to answer unknown questions about safety, dosage, and efficacy, and it has independent oversight.
Right.
Merely participating in one, or especially paying to participate in one, which is a massive red flag in itself, doesn't mean the treatment has a reasonable scientific rationale.
Which brings us to the most common scenario for people traveling abroad, right? Clinics selling purely experimental treatments. Now, wait a minute. I hear this marketing pitch constantly.
Okay.
They say, look, these are your own body cells. They're totally natural. Therefore, they don't need heavy government regulation like some chemical pharmaceutical drug.
Ah, yes.
So why does a regulatory agency get to classify my own natural tissue as a drug just because a doctor moves it from my hip to my shoulder?
So the mechanism that triggers regulation is manipulation. When a clinic takes cells out of your body, those cells are in their natural native ecosystem.
Right, doing what they normally do.
Exactly. But the moment a lab takes those cells, isolates them, and especially if they expand them, meaning they put them in a plastic dish with artificial growth factors, to basically force them to multiply into millions of cells, their fundamental biology adapts.
Oh, so they aren't even the same cells anymore, essentially.
They behave differently. When you force cells to divide rapidly outside the human body, it's a bit like making a photocopy of a photocopy.
That makes sense.
They can undergo genetic changes, they can lose their original signaling abilities, or they might not even survive the reinjection process. Furthermore, if the clinic stores them, freezes them, or mixes them with other substances, their regulatory classification fundamentally changes.
Wow.
They're no longer your natural tissue. They've been manufactured into a therapeutic product.
Yeah.
And manufactured products require rigorous safety testing.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So even if a clinic clears that legal hurdle, or at least, is honest about being an experimental facility, the patient still faces the biggest hurdle of all, which is proving it actually works for them, the evidence gap.
Yes, and this is where you, as the patient, have to demand absolute specificity. If a clinic simply tells you, oh, stem cells reduce inflammation, or they help the body heal itself, that is entirely insufficient for making a major medical decision.
Yeah, the source material is very firm on this. The evidence they provide has to match you. It has to match your specific diagnosis, the severity of your disease, your age, your overall health profile, and the specific source of the cells and the dose.
Exactly.
You can't just take a successful study about bone marrow cells treating a blood disorder and claim it proves umbilical cord cells will regenerate cartilage in a 60-year-old shoulder joint.
The biology just doesn't translate that way. You also have to understand the hierarchy of medical evidence. At the very top, you have systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and large-scale, double-blind, randomized controlled trials.
Right.
These are rigorous, independent evaluations where neither the patient nor the doctor knows who got the real treatment and who got a placebo.
And at the very bottom of that hierarchy,
Unpublished internal clinic data and, of course, patient testimonials.
the video testimonials. I mean, they're the cornerstone of medical tourism marketing, aren't they?
Yeah.
You see a beautifully shot video of someone walking without their cane for the first time in years, crying tears of joy, and it is so deeply emotional.
It is.
You think, well, they wouldn't lie about that. That's all the proof I need.
What's fascinating here is how the natural course of a chronic disease actually operates. Most conditions, especially chronic pain, autoimmune issues, or neurological disorders, they aren't static. The symptoms naturally fluctuate.
Oh, like flare-ups.
Exactly. You have intense flare-ups and then periods where the symptoms naturally subside.
So timing is basically everything.
Exactly. If a patient is in agony, they book a flight. They get a stem cell injection right at the absolute peak of a natural flare-up. A few weeks later, the flare-up naturally burns itself out as it was biologically destined to do anyway.
Oh, wow.
But the patient attributes that relief to the expensive injection they just received. They will gladly give a glowing, heartfelt testimonial crediting the clinic. But clinically speaking, it might just be coincidental timing.
And then you add in the massive placebo effect of traveling to a beautiful location, feeling cared for by a highly attentive staff, and maybe receiving concomitant treatments like, physical therapy or anti-inflammatory IV trips right alongside the stem cells.
And suddenly you don't know what actually caused the improvement. This is exactly why the ISSCR warns that testimonial-driven claims are a major red flag, particularly if a single clinic is using the exact same cell product to treat a dozen completely unrelated diseases, from autism to arthritis to heart disease.
Yeah, a magic bullet usually isn't one. And we see clinics touting these massive success rates, right? Like 85% or 90% success. But if you dig into those numbers, they just crumble. If a brochure claims 90% success, you have to ask, what's the denominator?
Right.
Are we talking about 10 people or 1,000 people? And most importantly, how they even define success.
That's a vital question. Does success mean actual verifiable tissue repair on a follow-up MRI? Or does it just mean the patient checked a box on an email survey saying they felt temporary pain relief for 2 weeks?
Huge difference.
Without a standardized definition and a defined long-term follow-up period, a 90% success rate is just a marketing metric. It's not a scientific one.
So, okay, assuming you found a clinic that actually provides peer-reviewed evidence matching your condition,
Yeah.
you still need to scrutinize the execution of the treatment itself, the who and the whats.
Yes, the logistics.
Because even with brilliant underlying science, putting it in the hands of the wrong personnel or using a degraded biological product will completely ruin the outcome.
Let's start with the who. The source material notes that international clinics often employ highly skilled, very charismatic patient coordinators.
Oh yeah, they're great on the phone.
They're fantastic for logistics. They help you book flights, they translate documents, arrange your hotel, and they make you feel incredibly welcome.
But they are not physicians?
They are facilitators, and fundamentally, they're salespeople. The person evaluating whether you are a suitable candidate for a complex biological intervention cannot just be the person selling you the package.
Right.
The clinic must match a qualified, specialized medical professional to your specific condition. If you're seeking treatment for a complex neurological disorder like MS or Parkinson's, you need to be evaluated by a board-certified neurologist, not a general practitioner or a sports medicine doctor who happens to work at the clinic.
And you also need to ask who specifically is performing the physical procedures. Who is doing the bone marrow aspiration from your hip? Who is doing the IV infusion? If they're injecting your spine, is there a radiologist using fluoroscopy or ultrasound imaging guidance to make sure the needle actually goes into the precise target tissue?
It's so important.
You cannot just assume a fancy building comes with the right specialists on staff.
And that leads directly into the what, which is the cells themselves.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, the market offers 2 categories. You have autologous cells, which are collected from your own body, typically from adipose fat tissue or bone marrow.
Okay.
And then allogeneic cells, which come from a third-party donor, very commonly derived from umbilical cord tissue or Wharton's jelly.
And neither source is automatically superior. It's a trade-off. Using your own autologous cells avoids any risk of your immune system rejecting them, but the surgical collection process has its own risks, and older patients might have less robust cells. Donor cells, on the other hand, might be more standardized and younger, but they require massive, stringent amounts of donor screening and quality control to avoid transmitting diseases.
Which brings us to the actual physical characteristics of those cells inside the syringe.
Just a quick break. This episode is brought to you by STEMCIERGE. If you're exploring stem cell therapy or evaluating clinics around the world, visit STEMCIERGE.com and take the free quiz to receive your personalized assessment. You'll get expert feedback on your eligibility, treatment options, and potential destinations, empowering you to make informed, confident decisions in the world of regenerative medicine. Visit STEMCIERGE.com today. Now, back to the episode.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to challenge a very common assumption.
Go for it.
Let's say I'm choosing between 2 clinics. Clinic A tells me I'll receive a dose of 10 million stem cells. Clinic B guarantees a massive dose of 300 million stem cells. On paper, isn't that cell count the ultimate proof of a premium treatment? Like, more cells equals better healing, right?
It is entirely logical to assume that, which is exactly why clinics use cell counts as their primary marketing weapon. But in cellular biology, cell count is absolutely not synonymous with treatment quality. Yeah, handing you a syringe with a massive number of cells tells you nothing about the identity of those cells. Are they actually the specific type of stem cell you need, or just a mix of random tissue cells? It doesn't prove their purity.
And what about viability? I hear that word thrown
Right,
around.
that is the most critical factor. Viability means, are those hundreds of millions of cells actually alive, healthy, and functional? Or are they senescent? Meaning they're basically dying, degraded cellular debris because they were handled poorly.
Wow, so you could literally be paying for an injection of 100 million dead cells?
And injecting dead cellular debris into a joint or a bloodstream can actually trigger a massive, painful immune response rather than healing anything.
That sounds awful.
It is. Furthermore, a massive cell count doesn't prove those cells have the ability to actually home in on the target tissue. The biological reality is that a higher dose is not automatically safer, and it's not automatically more effective. The only metric that matters is whether the specific dose being offered has a rational basis supported by clinical evidence for your specific condition.
So we have to look past the big numbers. And to understand why those cells might be dead or degraded, we have to travel from the clinic room directly into the laboratory. Because how those cells are handled behind closed doors before they ever enter a syringe is where the most severe hidden dangers lie.
This is the critical distinction between clinic quality and lab quality. You can walk into a clinic that looks like a five-star hotel lobby. Marble floors, incredible lighting, espresso machines, the works.
Yeah.
But no amount of marble in the waiting room can compensate for a poorly controlled, contaminated laboratory in the back.
The buzzword you see slapped on every clinic website is GMP, good manufacturing practice.
Yeah.
Clinics use it like it's a gold medal, proving they cure diseases.
Right, and GMP is a vital framework, but its purpose is deeply misunderstood by patients. GMP refers to the systems designed to produce medical products consistently under strictly controlled conditions. It dictates things like staff training, air filtration, facility cleanliness, environmental monitoring, and meticulous batch records.
It's basically like a highly sanitized commercial kitchen. Just because a restaurant's kitchen passes a rigorous health inspection for cleanliness and proper food storage, it doesn't mean the chef's recipe will actually taste good, or in this case, cure your illness.
Yeah.
GMP reduces the risk of contamination, but it does absolutely nothing to prove that the biological treatment actually works.
Exactly. It's a safety baseline, not an efficacy guarantee. And when we talk about safety baselines in a lab, we have to talk about donor screening and batch release testing.
What does that involve?
If you are receiving donor cells, the lab must rigorously test the final product. They test for sterility, they test for endotoxins, which are toxic components released by degrading bacteria that can cause severe fevers and inflammatory shock in a patient.
Yeah.
And they must test for mycoplasma, which is a very stealthy microscopic bacteria that lacks a cell wall and can easily hijack and ruin cell cultures without being easily detected.
And as a patient, you aren't just taking their word for this, right? You have the right to request the certificate of analysis for your specific batch of cells. If they won't provide it, that is a massive problem.
A huge red flag.
And the risks of bad lab practices are not theoretical. The source highlights a very sobering, specific CDC-linked investigation from 2024.
Yes. The CDC investigated several cases where patients traveled to clinics in Baja California, Mexico for stem cell procedures. They found 3 cases of difficult-to-treat non-tuberculous mycobacterial infections.
And we should explain that real quick. Non-tuberculous mycobacterial infections are incredibly dangerous because they are naturally resistant to many common antibiotics.
Right.
If you get one of those deep inside a joint space or your spinal column from a contaminated injection, you are looking at months of harsh, heavy-duty antibiotic therapy and potential permanent damage.
And it is important to state, as the source document does, that this investigation does not mean every clinic in that region is unsafe. There are excellent facilities globally, but it is a stark, real-world example of why stringent infection control and product traceability are absolutely non-negotiable. If a lab introduces a contaminant, they are injecting it directly into your body's most vulnerable systems.
And since we're talking about medical tourism, there are compounding travel risks that have nothing to do with the cells themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
The CDC notes that flying soon after some of these invasive procedures can significantly increase your risk of developing deep vein blood clots. There is also the reality that different regions of the world have different bacterial ecosystems and antibiotic regulations, meaning you risk returning home with antimicrobial-resistant organisms.
This raises an important question that every single patient must ask the clinic directly, face-to-face. What is your emergency complication plan?
Yes, so important.
No medical procedure, no matter how minor it seems, is entirely risk-free. If you have a severe immune reaction, an anaphylactic shock, or an acute infection, does the clinic have emergency resuscitation equipment on site? Which local hospital will receive you? Do they have a transfer agreement? And crucially, who is financially responsible for that emergency room visit?
That is a terrifying thought if you haven't planned for it. You do not want to be negotiating international hospital fees while having a medical crisis.
Definitely not.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the aftermath. What happens when the treatment is done, you board your flight home, and you are waiting for results?
Proper follow-up is arguably just as important as the procedure day itself. And the counterintuitive thing is that proper follow-up actually starts before the treatment even begins. It starts with baseline measurements.
Right, because if a clinic doesn't thoroughly and objectively measure your mobility range, your pain levels on a standardized scale, or your relevant blood markers before they treat you, how can they possibly prove they improved anything 6 months later?
They can't.
Without a baseline, you cannot measure a clinically meaningful change. It's just subjective guesswork.
Exactly. They need data. And before you board your flight home, the CDC strongly advises getting physical or digital copies of all your medical records, including translated versions, and organizing your local follow-up care with your physician back home, because you might run into hidden costs that you never anticipated.
Yeah, the hidden costs can be staggering, and they completely change the math of a cheap treatment abroad. We aren't just talking about the advertised package price. What about medical evacuation insurance if something goes wrong? Extended hotel stays if your recovery takes longer than the brochure promised? Caregiver expenses? Long-term physical rehabilitation back home?
It adds up fast. To help patients objectively navigate this overwhelming amount of information, the STEMCIERGE source material introduces a very practical tool, the STEMCIERGE Scorecard. It's a 24-point due diligence framework designed to help you compare clinics on an even, analytical playing field.
I love how cold and analytical this scorecard is. It basically takes the emotion out of the decision.
Yeah.
Every single category on the scorecard, from lab standards to physician credentials, is rated from 0 to 2.
Right.
A 0 means the information is missing, unverifiable, or the clinic dodged the question. A 1 means you got a partial answer. And a 2 means the clinic provided clear, documented, third-party, verifiable proof.
For example, if you ask about cell viability and they just say, oh, it's very high, don't worry, that is a 0 or a 1.
Yeah.
But if they hand you that independent certificate of analysis we discussed, showing exactly 95% viability, that is a 2. It forces you to look at the hard data, not the glossy presentation.
And the text also highlights instant walk-away criteria. These are extreme red flags where you shouldn't even bother pulling out the scorecard. You should just leave the website or walk out the door.
These are non-negotiable deal breakers in regenerative medicine. Walk away immediately if a clinic guarantees a 100% cure. Biology is too complex for guarantees. Walk away if they claim the procedure carries 0 risk. Walk away if they use high-pressure sale tactics demanding massive immediate deposits. And absolutely walk away if they refuse to transparently identify the exact source and handling of the cells they're putting into your body.
The document also mentions that you can use their free 3-minute STEMCIERGE assessment online to help clarify your treatment goals and get matched with vetted, objective providers. Though they do include a very necessary disclaimer that this is for educational and matching purposes, and it absolutely does not replace independent medical advice from your own personal physician. Ultimately, you have to be your own best advocate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute core lesson for anyone considering medical tourism is that the destination should never be your first decision variable.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the clinic is located in a beautiful, sunny resort town with ocean views. The scientific evidence, the regulatory compliance, the lab quality, and the safety protocols have to be established first. You must choose the evidence before you choose the destination.
So what does this all mean for you? It means presentation is not proof. You are now armed with the exact, specific questions to demand biological transparency, to protect your physical health, and to protect your wallet. You don't have to be swayed by a drone video of a fancy lobby anymore.
You now have the framework to look past the marketing language and ask the logistical, cellular-level questions that dictate whether a treatment is safe and viable.
We're going to leave you with a final Slightly provocative thought to chew on. Earlier, we talked about the fascinating mechanism of regulation, how your own completely natural cells become a heavily regulated product the moment a lab processes, expands, or stores them. It's a profound regulatory line in the sand. But as biotechnology continues to advance at lightning speed, as we gain the ability to manipulate our own biology in increasingly microscopic, precise ways, where exactly will regulators draw the line in the future? What is the boundary between your fundamental human right to use your own body's native tissue and a heavily manufactured, regulated, perhaps even patented pharmaceutical product? Will there come a day when simply optimizing your own biology is legally classified as an unauthorized drug? It makes you look at that glossy clinic brochure and the future of medicine in a completely different light.
It certainly does.
Thank you for listening. If you found this episode valuable, please leave us a 5-star rating and review, then share it with someone who may benefit from it. For global insights and personalized guidance on stem cell therapy, visit STEMCIERGE.com to receive your tailored assessment and explore your treatment options with clarity and confidence. And as always, remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please consult your doctor before making decisions about your health. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered with STEMCIERGE.com.